Hello and welcome to our Rise Up Disability History, Pride, and Allyship training. I'm your presenter, Max Hornick, Community Education Coordinator for Disability Network Southwest Michigan. My pronouns are they, them, and theirs. Disability Network Southwest Michigan is one in a network of 15 centers for independent living in the state of Michigan and approximately 400 nationwide. If you are in the state of Michigan, you can find your local Center for Independent Living by going to the Michigan Statewide Independent Living Council website, misilc.org, and clicking on the Resources tab. Or if you are outside Michigan, you can usually find your local Center for Independent Living by Googling your state and county name along with the words Centers for Independent Living. The image on this slide is our Disability Network Southwest Michigan logo. I've also provided my contact information for you on this slide in case you need to follow up with me after the training. This training is brought to you by Disability Network Southwest Michigan's Paving the Way to Self-Determination program. Paving the Way to Self-Determination is a program for families of children with disabilities, which helps provide resources and training to help prepare children to live an independent and self-determined life. Paving the Way to Self-Determination is a collaboration with the Michigan Developmental Disabilities Council, the ARC Michigan, Michigan Alliance for Families, and Charting the Life course. It is made possible through funding from the Michigan Developmental Disabilities Council. The images on this slide are logos for all of the Paving the Way to Self-Determination partner agencies. We like to start our presentations with the definition of a disability because we have found that every person has their own idea of what a disability is. The Americans with Disabilities Act, or ADA, says that a person with a disability has a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits one or more major life activities. Major life activities are things most people need to do every day, like walking, talking, reading, writing, and major bodily functions like eating, sleeping, or breathing. A developmental disability is any lifelong disability that is acquired prior to the age of 22. So this could be something that a person was born with, or it could be something that they acquired through illness, injury, or trauma before the age of 22. To prevent discrimination on the basis of disability, the ADA also has some protections for people who have a record of such impairment and people who are regarded as having such an impairment. The image on this slide is a group photo of 10 young adults standing in front of Disability Network's Kalamazoo office. Some people might look at this picture and say, I don't see any disabilities, but all of the people in this photo have a disability. The vast majority of disabilities are what we call non-apparent disabilities. It's very important to keep in mind that most of the time when a person has a disability, you won't be able to tell just by looking at them. And usually when you can tell just by looking at a person, it's the assistive technology they use that you're seeing, like a cane, hearing aid, service animal, or communication device. And so disability is a really large minority group in the United States. About 1 in 5 Americans have a disability. When it comes to adults, it's about 1 in 4 in the United States. And so it's really important to know that probably many of the people you interact with are people with disabilities. The agenda for this training is first we will talk about disability history, then we'll cover disability pride, and then we'll finally wrap up with disability allyship. Let's talk first about disability history. Historically, people with disabilities were often segregated away from society in institutions such as state hospitals and asylums. People with disabilities fought long and hard for the right to live, learn, and work in the community alongside our peers without disabilities. The Americans with Disabilities Act, or ADA, was passed in 1990 and is considered a key civil rights victory of the disability rights movement in the United States. For the history portion of our presentation today, I would encourage you to watch the 2020 Disability History Timeline video on the Disability Network Southwest Michigan YouTube channel. You can access it by clicking the link in the PowerPoint. After you've watched the video, here are a couple questions to think about. What's one thing that really sticks out to you from the video? And did you learn about the disability rights movement when you talked about civil rights in school? If not, why do you think that is? Now that we've covered disability history, let's move on to talk about disability pride. What is disability pride? Disability pride is the idea that people with disabilities should be proud of their disability identity. Disability is natural, and it should be considered a neutral human diversity characteristic, just like race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, or gender. July is Disability Pride Month in the United States in celebration of the anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act. Most people believe in the medical model of disability, which says that people are disabled by their impairments or differences. This medical model leads to people looking for what is quote unquote wrong with the person with a disability, and the belief that people with disabilities need to be fixed, even if their differences don't cause medical complications or pain. The image on this slide is a circle labeled the individual. Inside the circle is a frowning person with the problem written on their shirt. Arrows labeled problem are pointing at the person. But disability pride is rooted in what we call the social model of disability, which says that actually disability is caused by the way society is organized. So instead of looking at what is quote unquote wrong with the person, we need to look at ways to remove barriers to access and inclusion for people with disabilities. Under the social model, it's not the person with a disability who needs to be fixed, it's society that needs to be fixed. And in doing this, by removing barriers that unnecessarily exclude people with disabilities, we can ensure that disabled people have greater choice and control over our own lives. We did provide a handout for your reference with more information about the medical and social models of disability. The image on this slide is a circle labeled society. It contains a drawing of a person with a neutral facial expression. Arrows labeled barriers are pointing away from the person. There is a disability pride flag as well. Anne McGill created the Disability Pride flag. Her original design included bold colors and zigzag stripes that caused migraines and seizures for some people with disabilities. As soon as she learned this, she created a visually safe disability pride flag and asked the community to work together to make it even better. The image on this slide is the most recent digital version of the visually safe disability pride flag. It is a charcoal flag split in half diagonally from the top left corner to the lower right corner by 5 parallel stripes in red, gold, off-white, blue, and green. The flag is full of symbolism. The dark background represents mourning and rage for people with disabilities who have suffered from ableism, violence, and abuse. The flag has all 6 of the colors most commonly used in national flags, signifying that the disability community is global and spans borders between states and nations. The diagonal stripes represent how people with disabilities have to navigate barriers in creative ways, or cutting across the walls and barriers that separate disabled people from normative society. The 5 colored stripes, red, gold, off-white, blue, and green, represent the variety of needs and experiences in the disability community. Each stripe represents a different type of disability. Red for physical disabilities, gold for neurodivergent disabilities, white for invisible and undiagnosed disabilities, blue for psychiatric disabilities, and green for sensory disabilities. The parallel stripes represent the solidarity within the disability community. I did link Anne McGill's post on this slide so that you can access this digital version of the flag. It's a free public domain image, and Anne also provided a free public domain image of a version that you can use for printed or physical materials if you want to make your own t-shirts, bags, flags, or stickers. Now that we've discussed disability history and disability pride, let's talk a little bit about disability allyship. An ally is a member of a dominant group, in this case, people without disabilities, who takes action against oppression out of the belief that eliminating oppression benefits everyone. We did provide a handout called Tips for Being an Ally that you can keep for reference. So let's talk about the do's and don'ts of allyship. Allies do model and respect personal boundaries and consent for children with disabilities. This is really important because unfortunately, people with disabilities are more likely to be abused. Please watch the linked YouTube video on this slide regarding consent and kids with disabilities. One of the most important ways to ally yourself with the disability community is to presume competence. Far too often, non-disabled people assume that people with disabilities are incapable of doing anything for ourselves. This doesn't mean assuming that we can do everything. It means assuming that we can do a lot of things, and we'll tell you if we're encountering a barrier or a limitation. Do use neutral language to discuss disability. We've provided a handout called Language Guidelines that covers neutral language. Some people in the disability community strongly prefer person-first language, like the phrase person with a disability. Other people in our community strongly prefer identity-first language, like the phrase disabled person. Always describe people using the language they prefer. If your child is not yet able to express their preference, you can listen to the preferences of adults with the same disability to guide your language use in the meantime. Although the labels high functioning and low functioning are commonly used in medical settings, they are not neutral and contribute significantly to stereotypes and assumptions. Instead of using these value judgments of high functioning or low functioning, talk about your child's strengths and the specific supports or accommodations that they need. Don't disclose your child's disability when it's not necessary or not appropriate. I have unfortunately seen some parents share very personal details about their child's disability in public venues. Your child has a right to privacy, so please ask yourself before you share their personal information with others, why am I sharing this information? If the answer is something like, to acquire accommodations for my child, or to ensure my child receives appropriate health care, go ahead. Those are great reasons to disclose. But if the answer is something that benefits you more than your child, it might not be the right time and place to share that information. Don't pity disabled people, and don't use us as objects of inspiration. These are just a few tips for being an ally, and I hope they help you as you move forward. I hope you've learned something about disability history, disability pride, and disability allyship through our Rise Up presentation. This slide includes links to more information about all of our Paving the Way to Self-Determination partners. Centers for Independent Living, or CILs, are consumer-controlled, community-based nonprofit organizations that provide information and referral, advocacy, peer support, independent living skills training, and transition services for people with disabilities. To find your CIL, go to ilru.org. The Michigan Developmental Disabilities Council works to change systems to serve the needs, wants, and desires of people with developmental disabilities. For more information, use the link on the slide. Michigan Alliance for Families provides information, support, and education for families who have children and young adults, birth to 26 years of age, who receive or may be eligible to receive special education services. For more information, go to michiganallianceforfamilies.org. The ARC promotes and protects the rights of people with intellectual and developmental disabilities and actively supports full inclusion and participation in the community. To find your local ARC, go to thearc.org. Charting the Life course is the use of framework and tools designed to help visualize ideas, vision, and goals, as well as problem solve and advocate for supports. For more information, go to lifecoursetools.com. Thank you for your time.